Pat Brown could beat and will beat Jai Opetaia, and that fight could happen this year.
Quite honest though, ain't you, Frank?
Very honest. Gets me in trouble sometimes.
Nah, we like it, never change. 1 second. Right. Hopefully my mics are working. It's getting to the point, yeah, we're getting a bit old now. I've got to get upgrade, Frank. It's going to take more than glue.
Ober Red.
Albia. We could have the witchcraft Albia. Anyway, October Red. Abs, I'm here with Frank Smith. And we are here for the Brown Ducar presser. Thank you once again for having us here. Thank you for not having secret press meetings and keeping me off the invite list. That I do appreciate from Matchroom.
I haven't done that.
I know you wouldn't.
Never.
You wouldn't?
We don't do that. I don't know who's done it.
You always let me in.
I don't know what the suggestion is here, but yeah, never do it.
Talk to me about Pat Brown, and I'm going to say that, and I'm not overlooking Ducar, because I know what he's capable of. However, Pat Brown got recently mentioned by Adam Catterall as being a future potential opponent, the fight not to miss, with Moses Itauma at heavyweight. I just want your thoughts on that, as obviously looking after Pat Brown.
Yeah, look, we believe Pat Brown can go to the very top of this sport. This will be his 6th fight on a Friday night. Vasil Ducar another step up, but we believe he can become undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world and then move up to heavyweight and do the same thing at heavyweight. I just said in another interview that fight against Moses Itauma a few years down the line is massive. Now, Moses obviously now 14 fights in, he's in a different part of his career right now, but we've said Pat Brown could beat and will beat Jai Opetaia, and that fight could happen this year. If he wants that fight, I don't suggest he will, but Pat Brown's a special fighter and he takes every element of the sport so seriously, and he knows what he needs to do, and I'm excited about this journey with him. Huge ticket seller. He's got a great character, different. You've seen him on the podcast, him and Dave Allen, like two opposites. I actually did their podcast together, and he was like I think he could go into media or journalism once he retires as the undisputed cruiserweight, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. You know, maybe that's a little path for him, but it's another step up for him. You know, Vasil Ducar's been in with some brilliant fighters, and he's tested fighters as well. So I think this performance on Friday will be very telling as to what's next for Pat Brown.
Talk to us about that matchmaking then. What made you choose somebody as durable? Like you said, it's a step up, not too far of a step up, but it definitely is a step up to see where he is and how Matchroom does their matchmaking in regards to fighters that you believe are future stars.
Because they need to progress at the right pace. There's no point putting a fighter in with someone.
What is the right pace? That's what I mean.
I think every fight is different. I think you have to judge it on every fighter at that time. You know, there's no blueprint to say this is what we're going to do here, this is what we're going to do here. You know, we sat down with Pat Brown at the start, and the vision was always to move quickly because we believe in what he can do, as does he. You know, we'll never push a fighter too soon if they're not ready for it. But with Pat Brown, he really can go to the very top of this sport. So a test against a fighter like Vasil Ducar is exactly what's needed, because as they step up in the ranks, as they start to step into these type of fights that we name, like a Jai Opetaia, if that happens, you need to have gone through those ranks. You can't just jump straight in there. But yeah, it's all calculated by people smart. Like I always say I'm not the boxing specialist. Obviously, I know what I see, and when I sat down with Pat at the start, he always said, I just want to have tear-ups, and that was music to my ears because I love tear-ups. I'm not your traditional boxing fan, 12 rounds of, you know, jab and move. I love Pat Brown's stand there, let's have it.
That let's have it mentality. He's already sparring heavyweights. I know Richard Riad's been to spar him, Solomon Dakers has been to spar him. He's already almost like he's preparing, because when you look at Ducar does look like a cruiserweight. He looks like a cruiserweight, but I think
he also struggles to get sparring, by the way. As in,
okay.
Like, he struggles to get cruiserweight sparring because no one wants to get back in there with him. You know, so that's part of it as well. Like, you know, him and Sam Jones have been on to me about sparring Dmitri Bivol. Obviously, like heavyweight, but a brilliant fighter. They want to go in. They want to continue to learn and develop. And yeah, it's exciting times with Pat Brown, because he's one of those old school fighters with the ticket sales he does, with the kind of individual, you know, person he is. He can really build a massive fan base, and we're going to have some big nights in Manchester over the years with him.
It's funny that you mentioned Dmitri Bivol. Obviously, he's out next, and the only thing I want to ask you about his career is it seemed to be on this really massive star-studded trajectory. He went in and he took all the belts off Artur Beterbiev. and then he seemed to like turn into a ghost.
Yeah, he's had injuries, so he's been out for a while with injuries. It's always hard, and you have to remember as well, he's fought the best fighters every time. He beat Canelo Alvarez in Las Vegas on points, something that's very hard to do. He then went in and fought Artur Beterbiev. I believe he deserved to win the first time, didn't get the decision. Went back in there, rematched him immediately afterwards. They were in quite quick succession as well. I think it was October to February, and two very hard fights. But Dmitri Bivol is a special fighter, and he's obviously got his mandatory with the IBF against Michael Eifert.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're looking at the biggest fights possible. There's talk about Benavidez. That's a great fight. Benavidez obviously fighting May 2nd. There's talk about a Beterbiev trilogy as well. So let's see what happens. But we want to make the biggest fights. And Dmitri Bivol, I think it's hard because he's been away from the limelight because he hasn't been active. That's the reality of it.
And how do you maintain that superstardom of somebody that their first language isn't English? You are a British promoter. How do you keep them in that limelight?
With the performances. Also, the world is much bigger than the UK as well. So sometimes we're all guilty of looking and going, what's he doing? He's around the world. He's huge. And we're all guilty of looking and going, well, I haven't heard much from him. But he's been in Russia. He's been in Dubai. He's been all around the world doing things all over the place. So, for me, our job is obviously to consistently promote fighters. But at the same time, people want to see fighters fight, and where he's been injured, it is there's always going to be that period where it's a bit quieter, but he's back and he's got some big times ahead of him.
How do you deal with? You mentioned, obviously, you're speaking to IFL. You mentioned about your mate Derek Chisora going to fight on the weekend, Deontay Wilder. Now, you don't have that professional relationship with him. He's your mate. How do you say to somebody like Derek Chisora, this is going to be a fantastic fight, all the best, but I really think you should tone it down after this one? Or, in fact, just enjoy your life.
I've said it to him before.
But he doesn't listen now, does he?
No, but that's what makes Derek what he is. But also, if he would have retired when I thought he should have retired, look at the run he's been on, And it's not so much, for me, it's more the fact of you've done everything you could do. Do you know what I mean? And also, you made a load of money. It's not about the money. He loves boxing. He loves fighting. So, he's going to want to carry on. He's going to want to carry on. For me, he's going to do what he wants to do. I care, like I say, he's more of a mate to me. Don't care about the business side of boxing with him. I don't work with him in that manner. But I see him. I speak to him all the time. I spoke to him yesterday. He's a great guy. And you'll see on Saturday as well, he's the one person in this sport who comes out with some crazy shit, which he does all the time. And I tell him if he's ever wrong. But comes out with crazy stuff. But look at the people who are there to support him on Saturday night. Because he's loved. Everyone will be there.
Yeah, from celebrities to literally,
but people
like
in boxing,
myself,
promoters as well. Even people he doesn't work with. It just shows that it's a testament to the character he is.
Matchroom Talent Agency as well, something I want to talk to you about. Obviously, you've recently signed Tom Aspinall, and there's another gentleman. Please forgive me.
Henry Pollock.
Thank you very much. I'm not too au fait with other sports. Tom Aspinall being with you, is that potentially going to cause a problem with Dana White working with him for the UFC?
It shouldn't do. We've said our job is to make him as big as we possibly can outside of the octagon, so that when he has a fight in the octagon, people want to tune in. That's our job. We want to build the character he is. We want to build his personality. We want to build his profile outside of it, and that should only help the UFC. Look, Tom Aspinall is the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. He's a superstar, right? But they don't. The UFC's job is to promote the UFC, not necessarily the individuals in it. So the fighters need people who are going to promote them and build them.
So in your position that you're in, I think Eddie's mentioned, he spoke about contracts, he spoke about getting the best deal for him. What if there is pushback from the UFC, and you know what it's like, people can get frozen out? What is your plan B with him? Say, for example, he doesn't get back into the octagon. What is your plan with him then? Does he still have that value as a commodity to Matchroom?
Yeah, for sure. But he's also got a UFC contract. So he has a contract. And we're not here to cause problems. We're here to build him and develop him as a brand. And we've always said, he's obviously his father's involved. Andy has always handled the UFC discussions as well. So, the key is to get him the biggest fights, and to get him back in there. And at the same time build his profile and get him big opportunities.
Anybody else that you're considering in signing?
Lots. But I can't say who they are. But musicians, actors, other sports, a bit of everything. We're mixing it up.
And when you talk about strategy of building these talents, How do you intend to do that? I know you talk about, obviously, there's the Instagram, there's the basics. What else are you going to be doing for them?
I mean, look, our job week in, week out is to build talent, is to promote people. So it's actually quite an easy job because you're working with some of the, within their field, some of the biggest names in their field and great characters that already have massive followings, who have personality. Not every fighter we promote has huge personality, but look at what we still managed to do. So it's quite easy, really. Like, that's an easy part for us to do. Whether it's getting them sponsorship deals and commercial deals, whether it's getting them on big talk shows, whether it's getting them media opportunities. All right, champ, you ready to fight? Do you want to sign with Matchroom Talent Agency? Yeah? 2-year deal, 50%.
Negotiating with 3-year-olds at the moment.
Yeah, I'm doing deals. So yeah, that's our job. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easy because we do it week in, week out.
There's a little bit of talk about this bromance that seems to be forming with Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. I've never seen Usyk post so much, if I'm honest. It's almost like he's parading around Anthony Joshua, not like his pet, but he's parading around saying, look at what he's doing, look at what I'm doing for you, or look at how I'm helping you. As his promoter, what do you think of that? And when is Anthony Joshua going to be back out?
Yeah, look, it's great to see the relationship they formed, and I think that respect has been built as well from 24 rounds in the ring together. I actually think AJ gave Usyk his toughest fight, especially in the second fight. I think he gave him his toughest fight to date. There's a huge amount of respect, and Usyk's a great person and surrounded by great people as well. And AJ is also a great person. I think that's why they align, because they're both nice people who don't need to trash talk. They're similar characters in that sense, and I think Usyk sees even more potential in AJ as well. So I think it's a great relationship. I think for AJ to be surrounding himself by people of that level is brilliant. And I think when you become that big in any sport or any field, to have other peers around you who have been through that, it can only help. So yeah, in terms of when he's back out, he's back in camp, and that's the key. That was always the key: getting back in camp, getting back training, fit, ready to fight. So hopefully some news soon. We haven't got anything yet. There's discussions, but nothing just yet.
And my final question to you is, one of the things that we know that Eddie posted is that you've signed an extension with Riad season. I want you to let me land on this. The only reason why it sparked a bit of, can I say, concern? The only reason why I raised my eyebrows is obviously what's happened with Zofa, what's happened with obviously signing Conor Benn, the way it seemed to have been done, all of that, etc. Are you still comfortable to have that relationship?
Of course. We've had a great relationship for years. We're working on the May 23 Egypt event as well, helping deliver that. So for us, it's about, you have to treat every individual relationship in its own right. The Conor Benn situation doesn't really come into it. That's over here. It is what it is. And you have to just focus on what you're doing. And we've done great things over the last few years with Riad season, with Turkey Al Sheikh. Excited about what the future holds as well. So yeah, everything's positive. I don't spend too much time focusing on negative things.
We've noticed that. Listen, thank you so much for your time, Frank. Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Smith.